In the mid-1970s, Silicon Valley wasn't yet the global tech capital we know today. It was a quiet stretch of suburban California filled with orchards, small electronics companies, and ambitious dreamers tinkering in garages. Among these dreamers was a young man named Steve Jobs, restless, charismatic, and endlessly curious. Jobs had already lived an unconventional life. Born in San Francisco in 1955, he was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, who raised him in Mountain View. As a child, he was intelligent and inquisitive, though often stubborn and defiant toward authority. He dropped out of Reed College after just 6 months, preferring to audit classes that truly fascinated him, like calligraphy, which would later influence his obsession with typography and design at Apple. At this time, Jobs was searching for direction, dabbling in philosophy, experimenting with alternative lifestyles, and even traveling to India in pursuit of spiritual enlightenment. But technology was never far from his world. He had already worked at Atari, the pioneering video game company, where he impressed co-founder Nolan Bushnell with his determination. Yet Jobs wasn't a natural engineer. Instead, his genius lay in seeing how technology could be made approachable, even beautiful. The other half of the equation was Steve Wozniak, or Woz, a brilliant but modest engineer who thrived on building electronic devices for fun. Wozniak was an electronics wizard, able to design elegant circuits that others would have needed a team of engineers to produce. He was content showing off his creations to friends at the Homebrew Computer Club, a gathering of hobbyists who met in Menlo Park to share ideas and build the earliest personal computers. Jobs and Wozniak had been friends since their teenage years. Jobs, a few years younger, admired Woz's brilliance and shared his love of technology, though from a different perspective. Where Woz saw engineering challenges, Jobs saw opportunities to change people's lives. This difference would be their strength. One dreamed in circuits, the other in visions. When Wozniak completed the design of a compact, affordable computer in 1976, the Apple I, Jobs immediately recognized its potential. At the time, computers were clunky, expensive machines reserved for corporations, universities, or government labs. They were intimidating, far from accessible to the average person. Jobs believed they could change. He imagined a future where computers would sit on every desk, in every home, where ordinary people could harness the power of technology. The two Steves decided to start a company. They named it Apple Computer, a choice as unusual as it was simple. Jobs liked the name because it was friendly, approachable, and came before Atari in the phone book, a small but strategic move. Apple didn't sound intimidating, it sounded human. The company was officially founded in April 1976 in the garage of Jobs' childhood home at 2066 Chris Drive, Los Altos, California. It was a modest one-story suburban house with a small garage that became their workshop. Jobs' adoptive parents supported him, even if they didn't fully understand his vision. What mattered most was that Steve believed in it. That garage, cluttered with parts and prototypes, would later become a symbol of the startup spirit, a reminder that revolutions often begin in the humblest of places. The early days were anything but glamorous. To raise capital, Jobs sold his Volkswagen van, while Wozniak sold his beloved HP scientific calculator. With that money, they purchased components and began building Apple I boards by hand. Jobs handled the business side, persuading suppliers to extend credit, negotiating deals, and marketing the product, while Wozniak focused on refining the engineering. The first big breakthrough came when Jobs approached the Byte Shop, a small but pioneering computer store in Mountain View. He convinced the owner, Paul Terrell, to buy 50 fully assembled Apple I computers for $500 each. It was a daring move. Most computers at the time were sold as kits, requiring customers to assemble them. Jobs insisted on delivering a complete product, something a customer could take home and immediately use. This order forced Jobs and Woz to scramble for parts and work tirelessly to meet the deadline. But they succeeded, and with that, Apple Computer had its first real foothold. Even in these earliest moments, Jobs' defining traits were clear. He obsessed over details that others dismissed as unimportant: the look of the circuit boards, the packaging of the computer, even the typography of the manuals. To him, design wasn't just surface decoration, it was the essence of the product. Jobs demanded elegance, not just function. The Apple I wasn't perfect. It lacked a case, keyboard, or monitor, requiring users to supply their own. But it proved that personal computing could be both accessible and profitable. Within a year, the duo would release the Apple II, a polished, colorful, user-friendly machine that would help launch the personal computer revolution. The garage years tell us more than just the birth of a company. They illustrate the convergence of two minds: Wozniak's technical brilliance and Jobs' visionary drive. Jobs could see what others couldn't: that technology, if designed with people in mind, could become not just a tool, but a lifestyle. From those long nights soldering boards on a workbench, Jobs' larger-than-life ambition began to take shape. What began as a side project between two friends soon grew into a force that would transform the world. Apple was not just born in a garage, it was born from a dream that technology should serve humanity, not intimidate it. For Steve Jobs, that dream was only beginning. Every revolution begins with a spark. For Apple, that spark came when two very different personalities collided. Steve Jobs, the dreamer and salesman, and Steve Wozniak, the quiet engineer with extraordinary talent. Their friendship would become one of the most influential partnerships in the history of technology. Jobs and Wozniak first met in 1971, introduced by a mutual friend, Bill Fernandez, who lived in their neighborhood. Jobs was just 16 years old, a high school student with a rebellious streak, while Wozniak was 21, a few years older, and already immersed in the world of electronics. Despite the age gap, the two clicked immediately. They shared a love of pranks, technology, and pushing boundaries. Wozniak was shy, humble, and happiest when hunched over a workbench, soldering circuits, or sketching out designs on paper. He had been building gadgets since childhood: radios, calculators, and eventually homemade computers. For Woz, engineering was a kind of art. The joy came from making something elegant, efficient, and clever. Jobs, by contrast, was not an engineer. He wasn't particularly skilled with wires or circuit boards, but what he lacked in technical know-how, he made up for with vision, intensity, and persuasion. He could see the potential of an idea long before others did, and he had the rare ability to convince people to believe in that vision. Where Woz saw fun, Jobs saw the future. Their friendship grew through mischief. Together they designed and built a device called the Blue Box, a small gadget that allowed users to hack into the telephone system and make free long-distance calls. Jobs saw the Blue Box as more than a prank. He saw it as proof that with creativity and engineering, two kids could take on giant corporations. If we hadn't made the blue boxes, there would have been no Apple. Jobs later said it was their first taste of collaboration, and it showed Jobs how Woz's engineering brilliance could be harnessed to build products people actually wanted. Over late night talks, they shared a belief that technology could empower individuals. This was the early 1970s, a time when computers were massive, expensive machines locked away in corporate offices or universities. To ordinary people, computers were intimidating, inaccessible, and irrelevant. Wozniak loved the challenge of building smaller, smarter devices, while Jobs imagined bringing that power to the masses. Jobs also recognized something in Woz that Woz didn't see in himself: commercial potential. Woz was content to design clever machines for his own amusement or to impress fellow hobbyists. Jobs, however, believed these inventions could change the world if they were packaged, marketed, and sold to ordinary people. He pushed Woz to think bigger, to see beyond the garage or the club meeting. Their personalities often clashed. Jobs could be demanding, impatient, and sometimes manipulative. Woz was gentle, generous, and avoided conflict whenever possible. Yet this contrast created a powerful balance. Jobs pushed relentlessly for perfection, while Woz provided the technical genius to make Jobs' visions real. In many ways, they were two halves of a whole: the visionary and the engineer, the dreamer and the doer. By the time Wozniak designed the Apple I computer in 1976, Jobs knew they had something extraordinary. Woz saw it as just another hobby project, but Jobs recognized it as the beginning of a new industry, the personal computer revolution. He convinced Woz to join him in starting a company, and though Woz was hesitant at first, he agreed. Together they laid the foundation for what would become Apple Computer. The friendship between Jobs and Wozniak would face many tests in the years ahead: conflicts over money, direction, and recognition. But in those early days, their partnership was electric. Jobs needed Woz's brilliance, and Woz needed Jobs's vision. Without one another, neither would have built Apple. In a world where most people saw computers as impersonal machines for corporations, Jobs and Wozniak saw something radically different: a tool for individuals, a gateway to creativity, and perhaps even a way to change the world. Their meeting was no accident of fate. It was the beginning of a story that would reshape the future of technology. The creation of the Apple I was a milestone, but in truth, it was only the beginning. The real story of Apple's rise began when the two Steves turned a hand-assembled hobbyist board into a polished mass-market product that could capture the imagination of everyday consumers. That product was the Apple II. In 1976, after selling their first batch of Apple I computers to the Byte Shop, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak had proven that their garage-built company could deliver a product people would pay for. Yet the Apple I was limited. It was essentially a bare circuit board with no case, no keyboard, and no display. Customers had to assemble their own systems by adding parts, which restricted its appeal to engineers and hobbyists. Jobs knew this wouldn't be enough. If they wanted Apple to grow beyond a niche market, they needed something more ambitious, something beautiful, approachable, and complete. This was where Jobs' vision collided with Wozniak's genius. Wozniak had already been tinkering with designs for a more advanced computer. His new idea featured color graphics, a feature that was revolutionary at the time, and expandable slots for adding accessories. Unlike other machines of the day, it was simple, reliable, and elegant. Jobs immediately recognized its potential. But Jobs didn't just want to make a better machine. He wanted to change the relationship between people and computers. He argued that Apple should build a computer that was ready to use right out of the box, no soldering or tinkering required. He insisted that it should be housed in a sleek plastic case, not left as an exposed circuit board. He wanted it to look less like a piece of industrial equipment and more like an appliance someone would proudly keep in their home. This insistence on design became one of Jobs' trademarks. He believed that technology wasn't just about function, it was about form, simplicity, and even emotional connection. Many engineers at the time dismissed these concerns as superficial, but Jobs saw them as essential. He once said, "People don't know what they want until you show it to them." As development continued, Apple faced a new challenge. Money. Jobs and Wozniak didn't have the resources to mass produce the Apple II. Enter Mike Markkula, a former Intel executive who became Apple's first major investor. Markkula saw enormous potential in the young company and invested $250,000, providing both capital and credibility. He also helped craft Apple's early business plan, emphasizing not just technology, but branding and marketing. With Markkula's guidance, Apple went from a garage project to a real corporation. The Apple II debuted in April 1977 at the West Coast Computer Fair in San Francisco. It was unlike anything else on the market. The machine featured color graphics, a built-in keyboard, 8 expansion slots, and a compact plastic case. It looked friendly, almost inviting, far removed from the intimidating industrial machines of the time. The response was electric. Hobbyists were amazed by its capabilities, but more importantly, ordinary people were drawn to it. Teachers saw its potential in classrooms. Small business owners imagined using it for accounting and records. Families wanted one for their children. The Apple II wasn't just for experts, it was for everyone. One of the key turning points came in 1979 when a small company called VisiCorp released VisiCalc, the world's first spreadsheet program for the Apple II. Suddenly, the Apple II wasn't just a hobby machine, it was a serious business tool. Accountants, financial analysts, and entrepreneurs now had a reason to buy a personal computer, and for many, the Apple II was their first choice. VisiCalc became Apple's killer app, driving sales and cementing the company's reputation. By the early 1980s, the Apple II was selling in the hundreds of thousands, making Apple one of the fastest growing companies in America. In 1980, Apple went public, creating instant millionaires among its early employees and establishing Jobs as a multi-millionaire at just 25 years old. The IPO was one of the biggest in U.S. history at the time, and it symbolized how far the company had come from the cramped garage in Los Altos. Yet even as Apple celebrated success, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Wozniak remained focused on engineering and disliked the growing corporate structure, while Jobs was already looking ahead to bigger, bolder ideas. For Jobs, the Apple II was just the beginning. He wanted to build a computer that would redefine the entire industry. Still, the Apple II was a triumph. It turned Apple from a scrappy startup into a household name, setting the stage for the next great chapter in computing. It proved that Jobs' belief in design and accessibility wasn't naive, it was revolutionary. And it showed that Wozniak's engineering genius, when paired with Jobs' vision, could create products that truly changed lives. The Apple II wasn't just a computer, it was a symbol of possibility, the idea that technology could belong to everyone, not just corporations and scientists. For Jobs, it was validation that his instincts were right. For Woz, it was proof that engineering, when shared with the world, could transform society. And for Apple, it was only the beginning. By the early 1980s, the world of personal computing was at a crossroads. IBM had just entered the market with its PC, quickly becoming the standard for businesses. These machines were powerful, but they were also intimidating. They required users to memorize commands and navigate through cold text-based screens. Computing was seen as something technical, something distant, something reserved for professionals. Steve Jobs believed this was wrong. In his mind, computers were not just business tools, they were bicycles for the mind, machines that could amplify human creativity and imagination. Jobs wanted to take computing away from the sterile world of corporations and bring it to ordinary people, students, teachers, artists, musicians, and dreamers. He wanted a computer that was not only useful, but approachable, beautiful, and even fun. The spark for this vision came from an unlikely place. In late 1979, Jobs visited Xerox PARC, the Palo Alto Research Center, where he was shown something that very few people outside the lab had ever seen: a graphical user interface. Instead of typing commands, users could click on icons, move windows around, and use a small device called a mouse to navigate. To most, it looked like an expensive science experiment, but to Jobs, it was a revelation. He later said, "It was like a veil had been lifted from my eyes." This was the future. When Jobs returned to Apple, he became determined to bring this technology to the public. He first attempted to incorporate it into the Lisa computer, but the project was expensive, bloated, and ultimately failed. So he turned his focus to a smaller, scrappier effort inside Apple, a project called the Macintosh. Jobs handpicked a small group of engineers and designers for the Macintosh team. They worked in a separate building, like a secret rebel unit inside Apple. Jobs instilled in them a sense of mission. They weren't just building another computer, they were making history. He pushed them relentlessly, often staying late into the night, demanding changes, and pushing for perfection. His infamous reality distortion field convinced the team they could do things that seemed impossible, from fitting more power into a tiny box to designing a user interface that was simple and elegant. The team bonded deeply through the intensity of the work. They even flew a pirate flag over their building, a playful rebellion against the more corporate divisions of Apple. Jobs encouraged this spirit. He told them, "It's better to be a pirate than to join the Navy." That phrase became the unofficial motto of the Macintosh project. After years of work, the Macintosh was ready to launch. Apple planned an announcement that would not just introduce a new product, but make a cultural statement. In January 1984, Apple aired what would become one of the most famous commercials of all time. Directed by Ridley Scott, the 1984 ad portrayed a dystopian world dominated by conformity, with IBM cast as Big Brother. At the climax, a lone heroine smashed the screen, symbolizing the liberation of the individual through the Macintosh. The ad aired during the Super Bowl, and it stunned the world. Then, on January 24th, 1984, Steve Jobs took the stage at the Flint Center in Cupertino. He walked the audience through the vision of Apple before dramatically unveiling the Macintosh itself. To gasps and applause, The small computer introduced itself with a friendly, "Hello, I'm Macintosh," displayed on the screen. Jobs then let the machine speak through its synthesized voice, declaring, "Never trust a computer you can't lift." The crowd erupted in cheers and a standing ovation. The Macintosh was unlike anything people had seen before. It was small, elegant, and user-friendly. It had a graphical interface, drop-down menus, icons, and a mouse. It made computing feel approachable, something you could use at home, in a classroom, or in a studio. For Jobs, this was the realization of his dream, a computer for the rest of us. But the story of the Macintosh was not all triumph. Despite the groundbreaking design, the machine had limitations. It was underpowered, expensive, and lacked software at first. Sales were weaker than Jobs had hoped. Inside Apple, tensions grew between Jobs' relentless passion and the practical concerns of executives who worried about profits and market share. Still, the Macintosh represented something far greater than its sales numbers. It was a statement about the future of technology. It showed that computers could be personal, that they could be designed with elegance and simplicity, and that they could empower creativity rather than intimidate. The ideas behind the Macintosh would go on to shape the entire industry, influencing not only future Apple products, but also Microsoft Windows and the broader world of personal computing. For Steve Jobs, the Macintosh was not just a product, it was a manifesto. It was his declaration that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. And even though Apple would soon face turbulence, and Jobs himself would soon be forced out of the company he co-founded, the Macintosh proved that his vision was more than just a dream. It was the beginning of a revolution. By the early 1980s, Apple had grown from a scrappy startup in a garage to a company on the brink of global influence. The Apple II had turned the company into a financial powerhouse, and the Macintosh promised to redefine personal computing forever. But with success came friction between Jobs' unyielding vision and the board's cautious pragmatism, a conflict that would shake Apple to its core. Steve Jobs was a visionary with an almost supernatural ability to see the future of technology. He did not just want Apple to make computers, he wanted Apple to change the world. Every detail mattered to him: the curve of a casing, the feel of a keyboard, the elegance of an interface. He believed that technology should be intuitive, beautiful, and capable of eliciting an emotional response from users. To Jobs, anything less was unacceptable. This relentless pursuit of perfection, however, created friction. Employees both admired and feared him. Stories of Jobs berating engineers, storming out of meetings, and rewriting entire projects at the last minute were legendary. He demanded excellence in ways that were both inspiring and exhausting, pushing people to the edge of what they thought was possible. His reality distortion field, as it was called, could convince even the most skeptical team members that the impossible was achievable, but it could also crush morale when expectations felt unattainable. The board of directors, on the other hand, viewed Jobs' approach with growing concern. They were responsible for the company's financial stability and had shareholders to answer to. While Jobs saw innovation as a sacred mission, the board prioritized predictable growth, practical product design, and risk management. Meetings became tense arenas where passion met caution. Jobs would argue fiercely for revolutionary ideas, while the board pushed back, warning against unnecessary expense, market risks, and potential public backlash. The launch of the Macintosh in 1984 amplified these tensions. On one hand, the Mac represented the fulfillment of Jobs' vision, a personal computer with a graphical interface designed to be friendly, accessible, and empowering. Its introduction, paired with the iconic 1984 Super Bowl commercial directed by Ridley Scott, was a historic cultural moment. Yet, the Mac was also expensive, limited in software, and slower than the competition in some respects. Sales initially underwhelmed, and the board's anxiety grew. Jobs' relationship with John Scully, the CEO he had personally recruited from Pepsi, was also deteriorating. What began as mentorship and partnership had turned into rivalry. Scully saw the company through the lens of a seasoned business executive, weighing market realities and financial pressures, while Jobs saw every decision as a test of courage and vision. Their differing priorities became impossible to reconcile. By 1985, the conflict reached a climax. The board increasingly worried about Apple's direction, and Jobs' volatile management style sided with Scully. In a series of meetings, Jobs found himself stripped of operational control. Though he remained a co-founder, he was effectively powerless. Facing the collapse of his authority, Jobs made the painful decision to leave the company he had built from scratch. He later described the experience as devastating, likening it to being publicly humiliated and exiled from his own creation. Yet, in true Steve Jobs fashion, the ouster became a catalyst rather than a conclusion. He channeled his energy into new ventures that would eventually reshape entire industries. He founded Next, a computer company focused on high-end machines for education and business, and invested in Pixar, which at the time was a struggling computer graphics studio. While Apple faltered without his guiding hand, Jobs used this period to refine his vision, experiment boldly, and prove that innovation was not bound to one company or one circumstance. The conflict between Jobs and the board also highlights a recurring theme in technology and business: the tension between visionary leadership and institutional oversight. Jobs' uncompromising drive for perfection often clashed with conventional business norms, but it was precisely this tension that fueled some of the most transformative ideas in computing history. Without Jobs' insistence on revolutionary thinking, the Macintosh might have been a conventional, forgettable product. Without the board's caution, Apple might have risked catastrophic financial collapse. Jobs' ouster, painful as it was, became a crucible that forged the next stage of his life. It taught him humility, patience, and the importance of timing in executing a vision. And though he was absent from Apple for several years, his ideas had taken root. The Macintosh, despite its rocky start, had inspired a generation of innovators and set a standard for design and usability that continues to influence technology to this day. Ultimately, Chapter 5 is not just a story of conflict and loss, it is a story of resilience, vision, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. It is the chapter where a man confronts the limits of authority, the weight of expectations, and the harsh realities of business, only to emerge stronger, wiser, and more determined to leave a lasting mark on the world. Steve Jobs' departure from Apple in 1985 was one of the most dramatic and defining moments of his life and career. After more than a decade of building the company from a small garage operation into a technological powerhouse, Jobs found himself ousted from the very organization he had founded. The board of directors, concerned about conflicts between Jobs and the executive team, voted to strip him of his managerial responsibilities. For someone who had poured his soul into every product, presentation, and strategic decision at Apple, This was not merely a professional setback, it was a personal upheaval that struck at the core of his identity. The tensions that led to Jobs' departure were complex. He was fiercely passionate and uncompromising in his vision, demanding perfection in design, functionality, and user experience. This intensity often clashed with other executives who prioritized operational efficiency, financial predictability, and risk management. Jobs' insistence on controlling every aspect of product development and marketing sometimes frustrated those responsible for keeping the company stable. The board, caught between admiration for Jobs' genius and concern over his volatile management style, ultimately decided that removing him from the equation was necessary for Apple's survival. Being forced out was a bitter pill to swallow. Jobs described the experience as a period of humiliation and deep introspection. Yet, amid the anger and disappointment, he recognized an opportunity for reinvention. This phase became a time for reflection and self discovery. Jobs realized that failure, though painful, could also serve as a powerful motivator and a teacher. He confronted questions about purpose, leadership, and legacy, understanding that true innovation often required stepping outside one's comfort zone and experiencing the consequences of risk taking firsthand. Rather than retreating, Jobs embarked on new ventures that would ultimately define the next chapter of his career. He founded Next, a computer company dedicated to developing high-end workstations for higher education and business markets. Next embodied Jobs' vision for a computer that was not only powerful, but also elegant, intuitive, and forward-thinking. Simultaneously, Jobs acquired the graphics group, which would later become Pixar Animation Studios. Under his guidance, Pixar transformed from a struggling graphics division into a pioneering animation powerhouse, creating films that combine technological innovation with storytelling artistry. These ventures provided Jobs with invaluable lessons. At Next, he learned the importance of patience, long-term strategy, and the challenges of scaling technology without compromising quality. Pixar taught him the power of collaboration, the necessity of nurturing talent, and the impact of aligning creative vision with disciplined execution. Both experiences enriched Jobs' understanding of leadership, innovation, and the delicate balance between intuition and pragmatism. During this period, Jobs also confronted his personal growth. The forced separation from Apple gave him the chance to reflect on his relationships, values, and the kind of leader he aspired to become. He recognized that brilliance alone was not enough to inspire teams or sustain a company. Empathy, communication, and the ability to motivate others were equally essential. Jobs' exile was a crucible, shaping him into a more resilient, focused, and insightful leader. Ultimately, Jobs' departure from Apple, though initially a devastating blow, became a transformative chapter in his life. It underscored the idea that setbacks can catalyze reinvention and that true visionaries often emerge stronger after failure. The period outside Apple allowed Jobs to refine his philosophy, experiment with new ideas, and lay the groundwork for his eventual return. When he finally came back to the company in the late 1990s, he returned not only with renewed ambition, but with the wisdom, experience, and perspective that would propel Apple to unprecedented heights, revolutionizing technology, design, and the way the world experiences innovation. After the successes and setbacks of his early career, Steve Jobs' journey took a dramatic turn in the late 1980s. Having been forced out of Apple, he was now free to explore new ideas and ventures without the constant pressure and scrutiny of the company he had co-founded. This period marked a profound reinvention as Jobs sought to redefine not just technology, but his own purpose and impact on the world. It was a time of experimentation, risk, and bold thinking, qualities that had always defined him, but which he now applied with greater maturity and perspective. Jobs' first major undertaking after leaving Apple was the founding of Next, a company focused on creating high-end computers for education and business. Next was more than just a business venture. It was a laboratory for Jobs' vision of what computing could and should be. He demanded perfection in design, insisting that every detail, from the sleek magnesium casing to the crispness of the display, embody elegance, simplicity, and functionality. Jobs' team, a select group of engineers and designers, often worked under intense pressure, pushed to exceed limits that many thought impossible. The next computer, while not a commercial blockbuster, became a symbol of Jobs' uncompromising commitment to innovation. Its operating system NextTep introduced object-oriented programming concepts and an interface that influenced the next generation of software development, laying a technical foundation that would resonate for decades. While Next represented Jobs' technological ambition, his acquisition of the graphics group, later renamed Pixar, revealed another dimension of his genius, storytelling, and creativity. At the time, Pixar was a small, struggling animation company with talented artists but no clear commercial direction. Jobs saw potential where others saw risk. He invested not only capital but his vision, patience, and insistence on quality. Pixar's first fully computer animated feature, Toy Story, would eventually revolutionize the animation industry, proving that digital technology could tell deeply human, emotionally resonant stories. Under Jobs' leadership, Pixar emphasized collaboration, meticulous attention to detail, and the seamless blending of art and technology, a philosophy that mirrored his own approach to product design. During this era, Jobs' personal growth became as significant as his professional achievements. Being outside Apple allowed him to experiment with leadership styles, understanding the delicate balance between demanding excellence and fostering creative freedom. He learned the importance of listening to others, cultivating talent, and building teams that could thrive without his constant oversight. He also confronted failures and frustrations that tempered his temperament, giving him a deeper appreciation for patience and strategic thinking. These experiences would later shape the way he approached Apple upon his return, creating an environment where innovation could flourish without sacrificing discipline or focus. Beyond business, this period deepened Jobs' philosophical outlook. He explored Eastern spirituality, meditation, and minimalist aesthetics, which reinforced his belief in simplicity, clarity, and purpose. Jobs saw technology not as a mere tool, but as a medium for human expression and transformation. He believed that great products had to inspire, delight, and elevate the human experience. This conviction became the guiding principle for everything he touched, influencing design, marketing, and even corporate culture. The late 1980s and early 1990s were thus a crucible of reinvention for Steve Jobs. While he had lost control of the company he built, he had gained clarity, experience, and a broader vision. Next and Pixar were not just businesses, they were laboratories for innovation, leadership, and creativity. They allowed Jobs to refine his ideas, test his philosophies, and prepare for the moment when he could return to Apple and reshape not only the company, but the entire landscape of technology. This chapter in his life is a testament to resilience, vision, and the transformative power of stepping away from familiar paths to discover new horizons. After laying the groundwork with Next and nurturing Pixar, Steve Jobs entered a period that would define his true legacy. The 1990s were a time of quiet preparation, where he honed his ideas about design, user experience, and the intersection of technology and humanity. While many of his peers were focused on short-term profits or incremental improvements, Jobs was thinking decades ahead, imagining how computers, media, and communication could become seamless extensions of human creativity. His vision was not just about building machines, it was about creating tools that could empower people to express themselves, solve problems, and connect with one another in ways previously unimaginable. At Next, Jobs continued to push the boundaries of what computers could achieve. The Next workstation, though commercially limited, introduced innovations in software development and user interface design that would ripple through the industry for years. Object-oriented programming and the sophisticated operating system he championed influenced countless applications and platforms, providing a technical backbone for future breakthroughs. Next became a symbol of Jobs' relentless pursuit of excellence, a company where failure was unacceptable, but experimentation was encouraged. Every line of code, every curve of the machine, and every detail of the interface reflected Jobs' obsession with perfection. Simultaneously, his work with Pixar revealed a side of Jobs that the public rarely saw: his ability to foster creativity and transform industries outside computing. When he took over the struggling animation studio, few could foresee its potential. Yet Jobs understood that technology alone was insufficient. Storytelling, artistry, and collaboration were equally critical. He encouraged the Pixar team to push their boundaries, blending cutting-edge computer graphics with deeply human narratives. The success of Toy Story marked a turning point, proving that digital animation could compete with traditional filmmaking and establishing Pixar as a powerhouse of innovation, creativity, and cultural influence. Jobs' insistence on quality, attention to detail, and patience in allowing creativity to flourish became guiding principles that he would later bring back to Apple. During these years, Jobs' personal growth was as remarkable as his professional achievements. The setbacks he had endured, being ousted from Apple, the commercial struggles of Next, and the early uncertainties of Pixar forced him to reflect deeply on leadership, vision, and resilience. He learned to combine his natural intensity with strategic thinking, understanding when to push teams and when to step back and let innovation take its course. His experiences cultivated empathy, patience, and a refined sense of judgment, traits that would prove invaluable when he returned to Apple. Jobs' time away from the company he founded was not a period of failure, but a transformative phase that prepared him to lead with greater wisdom and insight. Beyond business, Jobs explored philosophy, design, and spirituality, seeking meaning and simplicity in all aspects of life. He immersed himself in meditation, aesthetics, and the study of art and design, drawing inspiration from diverse fields to inform his approach to technology. He believed that simplicity was the ultimate sophistication and that products should resonate with the human experience rather than overwhelm it. This philosophy began to crystallize in his work, guiding his decisions on design, functionality, and user interaction, and laying the foundation for the iconic Apple products that would later redefine entire industries. The late 1990s were thus a period of incubation, experimentation, and reflection. Jobs' efforts at Next and Pixar were not isolated projects. They were laboratories for innovation, testing the principles of design, technology, and creativity that would later shape Apple's renaissance. Through relentless pursuit of perfection, a deep understanding of human needs, and the courage to challenge conventional wisdom, Steve Jobs was quietly preparing for a return that would forever change the landscape of technology, media, and design. This era of his life illustrates that even in exile, vision, passion, and perseverance can cultivate extraordinary achievements, setting the stage for one of the most remarkable comebacks in modern history. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he stepped into a company that was struggling to survive. Apple was on the brink of collapse, with declining sales, a scattered product line, and a culture lacking focus. The once innovative giant had lost its way, weighed down by bureaucracy and an unclear vision. Jobs immediately recognized that survival required more than just incremental fixes. It demanded a complete transformation of the company's identity, strategy, and culture. He approached the challenge with the same intensity, clarity, and uncompromising standards that had defined his earlier successes. Jobs began by simplifying Apple's product line, cutting away distractions, and emphasizing quality over quantity. He eliminated overlapping and underperforming products, concentrating resources on a few key innovations that could define the future of the company. This focus was not merely operational, it was a philosophical shift. Jobs believed that excellence required constraint and discipline, that brilliance emerged not from endless options, but from meticulous attention to the few things that truly mattered. Every product, every design choice, and every marketing message was evaluated against his vision for what Apple could become. Beyond products, Jobs instilled a new culture of innovation and accountability. He surrounded himself with talented, driven individuals who shared his passion for perfection and willingness to challenge conventional thinking. He demanded creativity and resilience from his teams, but also fostered an environment where bold ideas could flourish. Jobs understood that technology alone was not enough to truly captivate users. Apple needed to create experiences that were elegant, intuitive, and emotionally engaging. His relentless focus on user experience became a guiding principle that would define Apple's resurgence. The iconic iMac, introduced in 1998, exemplified this new approach. With its vibrant colors, sleek design, and user-friendly interface, the iMac signaled that Apple was back and ready to lead in innovation. It was more than a computer, it was a statement, a symbol of Jobs' vision and the company's rebirth. The success of the iMac not only restored Apple's financial stability, but also reinvigorated the brand, demonstrating that bold design and simplicity could resonate powerfully with consumers. Jobs' approach was not without risk. Every decision carried the weight of the company's future, but his ability to combine intuition, design, and strategy proved transformative. During this period, Jobs also fostered strategic partnerships, such as the agreement with Microsoft to ensure continued support for key software. While controversial, this move demonstrated Jobs' pragmatic side. He could be fiercely idealistic in design, yet strategically shrewd in business. He understood that survival sometimes required compromise, but that compromise should never dilute the essence of Apple's identity or the quality of its products. Jobs' return to Apple was not only a personal redemption, but also a lesson in resilience and vision. He transformed a struggling company into a powerhouse of creativity, design, and technological innovation. By focusing on simplicity, user experience, and uncompromising excellence, he laid the foundation for products like the iPod, iPhone, and iPad, which would later revolutionize entire industries. His leadership during these years demonstrated that true innovation arises from a clear vision, relentless execution, and the courage to challenge norms, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Ultimately, Jobs' comeback illustrated the power of vision, perseverance, and uncompromising standards. He had returned not merely to reclaim a position, but to reshape the future of technology and redefine what a company could achieve when guided by passion, creativity, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Through strategic focus, cultural transformation, and a renewed dedication to design and innovation, Steve Jobs set Apple on a path that would leave an indelible mark on the world, proving that even in the face of adversity, extraordinary leadership can turn despair into triumph. With Apple emerging from the brink of collapse, Steve Jobs introduced a new era that would redefine the company's identity, the Think Different era. This phase was more than a marketing campaign. It was a philosophical declaration that reflected Jobs' vision for Apple as a brand that celebrated creativity, individuality, and innovation. At a time when the technology industry was dominated by functional, business-oriented machines, Jobs wanted Apple to stand for something greater, a connection with human imagination and the limitless potential of design. The Think Different campaign featured iconic figures like Albert Einstein, Mahatma Gandhi, and Pablo Picasso, symbolizing the audacity and ingenuity that Jobs wanted Apple to embody. It was a statement that Apple was not just selling computers, it was inspiring a mindset, a way of thinking that valued innovation over convention. This era also marked a transformation in Apple's product development approach. Jobs insisted on integrating technology and design seamlessly, emphasizing not only functionality, but also aesthetics and emotional appeal. Products like the colorful iMac D3 captured this philosophy perfectly. Its translucent casing and vibrant hues made the computer feel approachable, playful, and personal, contrasting sharply with the cold, gray boxes of competing PCs. The iMac was more than a machine. It was an experience, a piece of art that invited users into a world where technology could be intuitive, elegant, and joyful. The product's success reinvigorated Apple's financial standing and restored consumer faith in the brand, proving that design-driven innovation could be a powerful differentiator in a crowded market. Jobs' focus on simplicity and elegance extended beyond hardware. He revamped Apple's software and operating systems, pushing for interfaces that were intuitive and visually appealing. He believed that true innovation lay in making complex technology accessible and delightful for everyday users. This approach became a guiding principle for future products, from the iPod to the iPhone, setting Apple apart from competitors who prioritized raw specifications over user experience. Under Jobs' leadership, Apple cultivated a culture of meticulous attention to detail, where every aspect of a product, from its industrial design to packaging and marketing, contributed to the overall vision. Strategically, the Think Different era also helped Apple rebuild its identity in the global marketplace. Jobs positioned the company as a pioneer of creativity, attracting not only consumers, but also talented designers, engineers, and visionaries who wanted to be part of something extraordinary. This cultural shift was crucial. It transformed Apple into a hub of innovation where ambitious ideas could flourish. Jobs' insistence on integrating technology with artistry fostered an environment where risk taking was encouraged, and failure was viewed as a stepping stone to breakthrough innovation. The impact of this era extended far beyond sales and revenue. Think Different reshaped how people perceive technology itself, presenting it as a medium for self expression, creativity, and connection rather than merely a tool for work or efficiency. Jobs had created a narrative that resonated with millions, giving Apple a distinct voice in an increasingly competitive market. It was a time of reinvention, where the company's products, marketing, and philosophy coalesced into a cohesive identity that would define its legacy for decades. Ultimately, the Think Different era showcased Steve Jobs' unique ability to combine vision, strategy, and storytelling. He understood that success in technology required more than innovation. It demanded an emotional connection with users and a compelling narrative that inspired loyalty and admiration. Through this period, Apple emerged not just as a tech company, but as a cultural icon, demonstrating that visionary leadership, coupled with a relentless pursuit of excellence and creativity, could transform a struggling business into a symbol of ingenuity and inspiration for the world. Steve Jobs' return to Apple in 1997 marked a pivotal moment, not just for the company, but for the entire tech industry. And they'd have remembered as sees, or your merchant bees, was a furious determination and unrelenting drive that began to turn the tide. One of his first major initiatives was the creation and launch of the iMac G3, a product that would not only save the company financially, but also redefine what a personal computer could be. Unlike the dull beige boxes that filled offices and homes in the late 1990s, the iMac was a bold statement. Its translucent, colorful casing was striking, almost playful, signaling that technology could be approachable, expressive, and even fun. Jobs understood that computers were more than tools. They were personal companions, mediums for creativity, and windows to the future. The design of the iMac communicated that technology could have personality and style without sacrificing function. The iMac was revolutionary, not only in appearance, but also in philosophy. Jobs was obsessed with user experience, and he ensured that the iMac was easy to set up, intuitive to use, and free of unnecessary complexity. By eliminating legacy ports and drives, he simplified connectivity while still introducing forward-thinking technologies like USB, which would become industry standards. The machine appealed equally to novices and experienced users, democratizing access to technology and making computing more human-centered. Jobs' insistence on simplicity and elegance became a hallmark of his approach, emphasizing that a product should feel natural to use while inspiring a sense of delight in those who interacted with it. The impact of the iMac went far beyond Apple. It set new benchmarks for industrial design, inspiring the broader tech industry to prioritize aesthetics and user-friendly interfaces. Companies began to recognize that consumers wanted devices that were not only functional, but also beautiful and emotionally engaging. By marrying design and technology so seamlessly, Jobs created a product that connected with people on a personal level, turning a computer into a cultural icon. The iMac wasn't just a machine, it was a symbol of innovation, creativity, and possibility, demonstrating that Apple was a company willing to challenge conventions and take risks to redefine its market. The launch of the iMac also showcased Jobs' extraordinary skills as a communicator and showman. He understood the power of storytelling in technology, transforming product unveilings into highly anticipated events. His presentations were meticulously crafted to generate excitement, conveying not just features and specifications, but a vision of how people could interact with and benefit from technology. The iMac became more than a product launch. It was a narrative about creativity, individuality, and the joy of human-centered technology. This ability to inspire and captivate audiences helped solidify Apple's loyal following and establish a brand identity that went beyond mere electronics. It became a movement, a lifestyle. Financially, the iMac was a lifeline for Apple. Its success reversed years of losses, restored investor confidence, and provided the foundation for subsequent innovations that would define the next decade. The iMac's influence also paved the way for products like the iPod, iPhone, and iPad, which would continue to embody Jobs' philosophy of integrating technology, design, and emotion. Each of these products carried forward lessons from the iMac: simplicity, beauty, usability, and a deep understanding of how people interact with technology. Jobs' relentless pursuit of excellence ensured that Apple didn't merely participate in the tech industry, it shaped it. Beyond its immediate success, the iMac demonstrated Jobs' core belief that technology should be an extension of human creativity rather than an obstacle. He challenged his team to rethink not just how computers were built, but how they were experienced. Every curve, every color choice, every interface element was intentional, designed to evoke a sense of wonder and inspire users to explore and create. This philosophy became central to Apple's identity and remains a guiding principle in product development to this day. The iMac G3 was more than just a computer, it was a revolution in design, philosophy, and strategy. It signaled Apple's return to prominence, redefined user expectations for personal computing, and established a blueprint for the future of consumer technology. Through its bold design, intuitive usability, and cultural resonance, the iMac embodied Steve Jobs' vision of a world where technology serves people, sparks creativity, and elevates the everyday experience. It marked the beginning of an extraordinary era in Apple's history, one in which innovation, artistry, and human-centered design would come together to change the way the world experienced technology, forever cementing Jobs' legacy as a pioneer, visionary, and master of both innovation and storytelling. Steve Jobs' vision for Apple in the early 2000s extended far beyond computers. He saw an emerging digital landscape where music, media, and personal devices could converge, and he was determined to position Apple at the center of this revolution. This vision led to the creation of the iTunes Store and the iconic iPod, products that would not only redefine the music industry, but also reshape how people interacted with technology in their daily lives. Jobs recognized that digital music was fragmented and cumbersome, with users struggling to manage and enjoy their collections across different devices. His solution was elegantly simple, yet revolutionary: combine a seamless hardware experience with intuitive software and a centralized ecosystem for content. The iPod, with its minimalist design, intuitive click wheel, and sleek portability, became an instant cultural phenomenon. Jobs insisted that every aspect of the device reflect Apple's core philosophy of simplicity, and user-centered design. No detail was too small. The packaging, the interface, the way songs were added and navigated, all were meticulously crafted to provide an effortless and enjoyable user experience. The iPod was not just a music player, it was a statement about how technology could integrate into personal life, offering convenience, style, and a sense of ownership over one's digital world. Complementing the iPod was the iTunes software, and eventually the iTunes Store. Jobs' brilliance lay in recognizing that hardware alone was not enough. The ecosystem had to provide content in a legal, accessible, and user friendly manner. By partnering with record labels and offering music at an affordable price per song, Apple transformed the music industry, making digital distribution mainstream while curbing piracy. This seamless integration between device and content created a loyal user base, reinforcing Apple's reputation as an innovator capable of transforming entire industries. Jobs' digital hub strategy extended beyond music. He envisioned the Mac as the central hub through which users could manage all aspects of their digital lives, including photos, videos, and other media. This holistic approach reflected his understanding that technology's true power lay in its ability to simplify complex tasks and empower creativity. Each product, iPod, iTunes, iPhoto, iMovie, was a piece of a larger ecosystem, working together to create a unified and enriching digital experience. Jobs' foresight in recognizing the importance of integration and ecosystem thinking positioned Apple ahead of competitors who focused on standalone products rather than cohesive experiences. The success of the iPod and iTunes also demonstrated Jobs' mastery of marketing and storytelling. Product launches became cultural events, generating immense anticipation and excitement. Jobs' presentations highlighted not only features, but the broader vision, a lifestyle enhanced by technology, a world where personal creativity and entertainment were seamlessly accessible. He understood that technology was not just about functionality, but about emotion and connection. Users didn't just buy devices, they bought an experience, a sense of belonging to a community that valued innovation, design, and simplicity. Moreover, these innovations reinforced Apple's brand identity as a company that challenged norms and redefined expectations. Jobs' insistence on elegance, usability, and integration ensured that Apple's products were not only tools but cultural icons. The iPod, in particular, became symbolic of personal freedom, individuality, and a new way of interacting with media, inspiring a generation to rethink how technology could enhance their lives. Through these products, Jobs demonstrated that design and technology, when combined thoughtfully, could reshape industries, influence culture, and enrich human experience in meaningful ways. Ultimately, the launch of the iPod, iTunes, and the broader digital hub strategy exemplified Jobs' ability to see trends before they emerged, anticipate user needs, and create products that transformed the way people lived, worked, and entertained themselves. By integrating hardware, software, and content, Jobs set a new standard for consumer technology, laying the foundation for the innovations that would follow with the iPhone, iPad, and beyond. His approach emphasized that success in technology required not just invention, but vision, intuition, and an unwavering commitment to creating products that resonate deeply with people. The iPod era was a turning point, proving that Apple, under Jobs' leadership, could revolutionize entire industries while making technology personal, accessible, and profoundly inspiring. Steve Jobs' introduction of the iPhone in 2007 marked one of the most transformative moments in technology history. For years, Jobs had envisioned a device that could combine communication, entertainment, and computing into a single, elegant package. At the time, smartphones were clunky, difficult to navigate, and primarily focused on business users. Jobs challenged this paradigm, insisting that a truly revolutionary device should be intuitive, beautiful, and accessible to everyone. The iPhone was not just a phone, it was a bold statement of Apple's vision for the future, blending hardware, software, and design into a seamless experience that would redefine how people interacted with technology. The development of the iPhone was fraught with challenges. Jobs demanded perfection from his team, often pushing them to the brink with his intense attention to detail. Every aspect, from the touch interface to the precision of the glass screen and the responsiveness of the operating system, was meticulously scrutinized. Jobs understood that the device's success depended not only on functionality, but also on the emotional connection users would feel. The touchscreen interface, which allowed direct interaction with content through gestures, was revolutionary. It eliminated the need for physical keyboards, simplified navigation, and introduced a new way for users to engage with digital content, setting a precedent for the next decade of mobile devices. Complementing the iPhone's hardware was its software. Jobs emphasized the importance of a cohesive ecosystem where the operating system, applications, and services worked harmoniously. This philosophy led to the development of iOS, an intuitive operating system that prioritized simplicity, speed, and reliability. Users could easily access email, browse the web, manage media, and run apps without the frustrations common in other smartphones of the era. Jobs' insistence on controlling both hardware and software allowed Apple to deliver a product that was far more polished and enjoyable than competitors' offerings, demonstrating the power of an integrated approach to technology. The launch of the App Store in 2008 further transformed the mobile landscape. Jobs recognized that third-party developers could expand the iPhone's capabilities exponentially. By creating a platform where developers could offer applications directly to users, Apple unlocked creativity and innovation on a massive scale. The App Store not only provided users with a vast array of tools, games, and utilities, but also created a thriving ecosystem that incentivized developers to push boundaries. This strategy not only cemented the iPhone's dominance, but also established a new model for software distribution, influencing the entire tech industry. Jobs' brilliance extended beyond product design. He was a master of marketing and storytelling. The iPhone's unveiling at Macworld 2007 captivated audiences worldwide, with Jobs' presentation highlighting not just features, but the broader vision, a world where communication, media, and computing could coexist seamlessly in one device. His ability to articulate this vision made people understand the iPhone not merely as a gadget, but as a transformative tool that would change their daily lives. The excitement generated by his keynote created a sense of anticipation and desire unmatched in the tech industry, establishing a new standard for product launches. The iPhone's impact extended far beyond Apple's success. It redefined expectations for mobile technology, influenced how other companies approached design and user experience, and spurred the development of entire industries centered around apps, mobile advertising, and digital services. Jobs' insistence on combining elegance, usability, and functionality set a precedent that continues to shape devices and interfaces today. The iPhone became a symbol of innovation, demonstrating how thoughtful design and visionary thinking could revolutionize not just a product, but the way people live, communicate, and interact with the digital world. Ultimately, the iPhone era showcased Jobs' unique ability to anticipate trends, understand human behavior, and integrate multiple elements of technology into a cohesive, compelling experience. He transformed Apple from a computer company into a mobile powerhouse, setting the stage for future innovations such as the iPad, Apple Watch, and beyond. The lessons from the iPhone: attention to detail, ecosystem integration, and prioritizing user experience remain defining aspects of Apple's philosophy and Jobs' enduring legacy. Through the iPhone, Jobs demonstrated that true innovation requires vision, courage, and an unwavering commitment to creating products that resonate deeply with people and reshape the world around them. Steve Jobs' vision for personal computing and media consumption expanded further with the development of the iPad, which he introduced to the world in 2010. While smartphones had already transformed communication and mobility, Jobs saw an opportunity to create a device that bridged the gap between laptops and phones, a device that could deliver content, productivity, and entertainment in a way that felt natural and immersive. The iPad was designed not simply as a larger iPhone, but as a unique platform that reimagined how people interacted with technology, combining portability with a rich user experience. The creation of the iPad involved careful consideration of hardware, software, and user interface design. Jobs insisted on a sleek, lightweight form factor that emphasized simplicity and elegance, while the touchscreen interface allowed users to interact directly with content in a way that felt intuitive. Apple's iOS, already refined through the iPhone, provided a seamless and familiar experience, enabling users to navigate apps, browse the web, watch videos, and read books with ease. Jobs understood that the iPad's success depended on making technology feel effortless, reducing barriers between the user and the device. Jobs also envisioned the iPad as a tool for creativity and productivity, with the introduction of apps designed specifically for the platform, ranging from drawing and music creation tools to productivity suites. The iPad offered users the ability to work, learn, and create in ways that were previously difficult on mobile devices. Jobs' insistence on tight integration between hardware and software ensured that the device performed smoothly, allowing developers to push the boundaries of what a tablet could do. This combination of power, usability, and design elegance set the iPad apart from competing tablets, establishing a new category in personal computing. The iPad also had a profound impact on media consumption. Jobs recognized that digital content, books, magazines, newspapers, and video was shifting online, and he wanted the iPad to be the ideal device for accessing and enjoying this content. The launch of the iBook Store, along with partnerships with media publishers, allowed users to download and read books, magazines, and newspapers conveniently. Similarly, the iPad provided a superior platform for watching films, streaming music, and playing games, creating an immersive experience that was both portable and powerful. Jobs' vision transformed the iPad into more than a tool. It became a gateway to a new era of digital media. Marketing and presentation were critical to the iPad's success, and Jobs once again demonstrated his unmatched ability to communicate vision. The product launch captivated audiences, emphasizing the iPad's simplicity, versatility, and potential to change everyday life. Jobs positioned the device as a revolutionary product that could serve multiple roles: an e-reader, a media player, a creative studio, and a productivity tool, all in one. This holistic approach to design and messaging helped consumers understand the device's value and created immense anticipation and excitement. The iPad's introduction also influenced broader technology trends. It inspired other companies to develop tablets and rethink the possibilities of portable computing, reshaping the tech industry and establishing a new standard for mobile devices. By emphasizing design, ecosystem integration, and user experience, Jobs ensured that the iPad was not merely a product, but a cultural phenomenon, shaping how people interacted with information, entertainment, and technology in their daily lives. Ultimately, the iPad reflected Jobs' enduring philosophy: technology should be accessible, intuitive, and deeply human. It showcased his ability to foresee how people would use technology in their personal and professional lives, and his skill in creating devices that seamlessly integrated into those experiences. Through the iPad, Jobs once again transformed an industry, setting a benchmark for innovation, design, and user experience that continues to influence the development of personal technology today. Steve Jobs' impact on Apple in his later years was profound, extending far beyond the launch of individual products. When he returned to Apple in 1997, the company was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, plagued by poor management decisions, a bloated product lineup, and dwindling consumer confidence. Jobs immediately recognized that survival required not only innovation, but also discipline, focus, and a clear sense of identity. He streamlined Apple's product offerings, cutting underperforming projects and concentrating the company's resources on a few core products that could define the future of computing. This bold move demonstrated his understanding that quality and focus were far more important than quantity in creating lasting impact. Jobs' leadership style was legendary. He was known for being demanding, sometimes uncompromising, and often confrontational, but this intensity came from an unshakable belief in his vision and an insistence that the products Apple released should be nothing short of exceptional. Employees would recount stories of Jobs pushing designers and engineers late into the night, challenging every detail from the user interface to the packaging and even the sound of the startup chime. While this approach could be harsh, it instilled a culture of excellence and resilience within the company, encouraging employees to achieve levels of creativity and craftsmanship they might never have thought possible. Jobs believed that attention to the smallest details, whether the curve of an icon, the feel of a button, or the aesthetic of a product's packaging, was critical in creating products that customers would not only use but cherish. One of the hallmarks of Jobs' later career was his ability to foresee and shape market trends. He had an uncanny sense of what consumers wanted before they even knew it themselves. The iPod, introduced in 2001, transformed the music industry by putting thousands of songs into the hands of everyday users and integrating seamlessly with iTunes to create a full ecosystem for digital music. The iPhone, unveiled in 2007, redefined the smartphone, merging a phone, media player, and internet browser into one device with an intuitive touchscreen interface. Similarly, the iPad launched in 2010, creating an entirely new category of computing devices that combined portability with power and usability. Through these innovations, Jobs didn't just release products, he created experiences that fundamentally altered the way people interacted with technology. Even as his health declined due to his battle with pancreatic cancer, Jobs remained deeply involved in the strategic direction of Apple. He continued to mentor executives, collaborate closely with designers, and review every aspect of Apple's operations. His presence served as both a guiding force and an inspiration, reminding the company of the values and principles upon which it had been founded. Jobs understood that sustaining Apple's success required not only brilliant products, but also a cohesive company culture built on creativity, integrity, and relentless pursuit of excellence. He carefully nurtured leadership within the company, ensuring that successors like Tim Cook were equipped to carry forward the vision he had so meticulously crafted. Jobs' later years also highlighted his profound understanding of legacy. He worked tirelessly to ensure that Apple would continue to innovate, inspire, and lead the technology industry even after his departure. He emphasized that technology should serve people, be intuitive, and enhance human creativity, not merely exist as a collection of circuits and software. Beyond Apple, his influence reverberated across Silicon Valley and the global tech community, inspiring entrepreneurs, designers, and engineers to pursue innovation with passion, courage, and a focus on user experience. His philosophy that technology should be both functional and beautiful became a guiding principle for countless innovators around the world. Ultimately, Jobs' later years exemplified the fusion of vision, discipline, and human-centric design. By combining creativity with execution, he created products that were not only commercially successful, but also culturally transformative. The iPod, iPhone, and iPad became symbols of a new era in technology, shaping how people consume media, communicate, and navigate their lives. Steve Jobs' unwavering commitment to excellence, his relentless pursuit of innovation, and his ability to inspire those around him ensured that Apple would remain a powerhouse of creativity and influence for generations to come. His legacy stands as a testament to the power of vision, the importance of attention to detail, and the enduring impact of pursuing one's passion with unwavering dedication. Steve Jobs' personal philosophies and leadership principles were as influential as the products he created. He believed that innovation stemmed from connecting experiences, ideas, and disciplines in ways others could not see. Jobs often spoke of intuition and creativity as central to problem solving, emphasizing that technology should not just be functional, but also evoke emotion, delight, and wonder. He encouraged thinking differently, his famous mantra, and consistently challenged conventional wisdom, pushing both himself and his teams to explore new possibilities. Jobs' insistence on simplicity in design was not about minimalism for its own sake, but about clarity, usability, and elegance. Every product detail, every interaction had to serve a purpose and enhance the user experience. Jobs' approach to leadership was unconventional yet deeply effective. He was known for his demanding standards and exacting vision, traits that could be polarizing but were rooted in a deep desire to create excellence. He often called on employees to surpass what they thought possible, sometimes frustrating those around him, yet ultimately driving innovation at levels few companies could achieve. His leadership style combined intuition, empathy for the user, and a profound understanding of design and technology's intersection. Jobs was a master of storytelling, capable of articulating a vision so compelling that it inspired teams, customers, and investors alike. His presentations became legendary, not just for their content, but for the way he could convey the excitement and potential of a product, making audiences feel they were witnessing the future unfold before their eyes. Another central tenet of Jobs' philosophy was focus. He understood the power of saying no, selecting a few products to perfect rather than spreading resources thin across many. This philosophy shaped Apple's product strategy and ensured that every release carried a signature level of polish and innovation. Jobs also valued craftsmanship and attention to detail, believing that even elements unseen by the user, such as internal circuitry or code structure, should reflect care and precision. This dedication to quality became a hallmark of Apple products and a defining aspect of the company's identity. Jobs' impact extended beyond Apple's products to broader cultural and technological landscapes. He changed the way people interact with music, media, communication, and computing. His insistence on integrating hardware, software, and services created ecosystems that were intuitive, seamless, and transformative. Devices like the iPhone not only redefined phones, but also catalyzed the rise of mobile apps, social media, and the modern digital economy. The iPad reshaped education, entertainment, and business workflows, while the MacBook and iMac demonstrated that performance and aesthetic design could coexist harmoniously. Through these innovations, Jobs influenced industries far beyond technology, from music and publishing to telecommunications and retail. Jobs' personal life and philosophies also reveal the human side of innovation. He valued intuition, mindfulness, and a connection to deeper meaning in work and life. He often spoke about living each day as if it were the last, urging himself and others to focus on what truly mattered. His experiences, including being adopted, facing early setbacks, and confronting mortality, shaped a worldview centered on purpose, creativity, and authenticity. Jobs' ability to blend personal vision with professional execution created not only products, but movements, inspiring millions to embrace curiosity, think differently, and pursue their passions relentlessly. Even in the face of illness, Jobs remained deeply committed to his work, mentoring successors, refining product lines, and influencing Apple's strategic direction. His attention to detail, insistence on innovation, and dedication to user experience left a legacy that continues to define Apple and the technology industry at large. The cultural impact of his vision is evident in the millions of people who use Apple products daily, the countless entrepreneurs inspired by his example, and the pervasive influence of design-driven innovation in modern technology. Ultimately, Jobs' philosophies and leadership style demonstrate the power of vision, focus, and human-centric design. His life illustrates that success is not merely about creating products, but about shaping experiences, inspiring others, and leaving a lasting impact on the world. Steve Jobs taught that by combining passion, intuition, discipline, and creativity, it is possible to change industries, influence culture, and leave a legacy that endures far beyond a single lifetime. His story serves as a timeless lesson for innovators, leaders, and dreamers. Excellence is not optional, and the pursuit of meaningful work can transform both individual lives and society as a whole. After Steve Jobs' passing in October 2011, the world felt the loss of one of the most visionary minds in technology and business. Yet, his influence did not end with his life. It continued to shape Apple, the technology industry, and even broader cultural and economic trends. Tim Cook, Jobs' chosen successor, inherited a company with a strong foundation of design driven innovation, a loyal customer base, and a culture that valued excellence, focus, and user experience. Cook faced the immense challenge of maintaining Apple's momentum without compromising the core philosophies Jobs had instilled. Under his leadership, Apple continued to innovate while expanding into new areas, demonstrating that the principles Jobs championed, simplicity, intuition, and integration, could guide the company even in his absence. The post Jobs era has seen Apple solidify its position as a global powerhouse, not only in hardware, but also in software, services, and ecosystem integration. Products like the Apple Watch, AirPods, and the evolution of the iPhone and iPad lines showcase Apple's ability to blend technology with lifestyle, creating devices that feel indispensable to users. Apple's services, from Apple Music to iCloud and Apple TV Plus, reflect Jobs' vision of an ecosystem where hardware and software work seamlessly together, enhancing convenience, entertainment, and productivity. Beyond products, Jobs' insistence on design excellence and intuitive user experiences continues to influence every aspect of Apple's operations, from packaging to retail stores to customer support, ensuring the company retains the unique personality and vision he championed. Jobs' legacy is not confined to Apple. His impact can be seen across industries, inspiring a generation of entrepreneurs, designers, and engineers to pursue innovation boldly and think differently. Companies now prioritize user centric design, seamless ecosystems, and product elegance, all principles that Jobs made central to Apple's identity. The rise of app driven business models, digital media platforms, and personal technology integration owes much to the cultural and technological shifts he helped catalyze. In classrooms, boardrooms, and tech labs around the world, Steve Jobs' story is studied as a blueprint for combining vision, creativity, and strategic execution to achieve transformative results. Culturally, Jobs has become an enduring icon, celebrated not just for his inventions, but for his approach to life and work. His speeches, interviews, and writings continue to inspire, emphasizing passion, perseverance, and the pursuit of meaningful work. The notion of thinking differently has transcended Apple, becoming a mantra for innovation in business, art, education, and beyond. Memorials, biographies, and documentaries further cement his influence, ensuring that new generations understand both the challenges he faced and the principles that guided his extraordinary career. Perhaps most importantly, Jobs' story illustrates that innovation is not merely about technological advancement, but about vision, storytelling, and the human experience. He demonstrated that products could be more than tools. They could evoke emotion, enhance creativity, and connect people in profound ways. By blending artistry, technology, and a relentless pursuit of excellence, Jobs left a blueprint for future innovators, proving that one individual's vision can reshape industries, inspire millions, and leave a legacy that endures for decades. In essence, Steve Jobs' posthumous influence is a testament to the lasting power of ideas, leadership, and design philosophy. Apple's ongoing success, the technology landscape he helped shape, and the countless individuals inspired by his life's work all speak to a legacy that transcends time. Jobs remains a symbol of visionary thinking, showing that creativity, courage, and unwavering focus can not only build products, but also change the world. His life and philosophy continue to inspire innovators everywhere to push boundaries, embrace challenges, and leave their mark on the future. Steve Jobs' approach to creativity was more than a strategy. It was a philosophy that infused every aspect of his life and work. From the very inception of Apple, he believed that technology should not merely serve a functional purpose, but should touch people emotionally, creating experiences that felt personal, intuitive, and even magical. He insisted that products should be as aesthetically pleasing as they were powerful, blending form and function in a way that few companies had ever attempted. For Jobs, design was not just about appearance, it was a language through which a company communicated its values, vision, and care for the user. This ethos shaped iconic products such as the Macintosh, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad, each representing a leap not just in technology, but in how humans interacted with it. Central to Jobs' philosophy was the belief that intuition and instinct could be more valuable than market research. He argued that consumers often cannot articulate what they want until it is presented to them, and that true innovation often comes from anticipating needs before they exist. This perspective led to revolutionary breakthroughs, including the graphical interface of the Macintosh, which made computing accessible and personal, the iPod, which redefined how people experienced music, and the iPhone, which transformed communication, entertainment, and daily life. Every product he championed reflected his insistence on simplicity, elegance, and the seamless integration of hardware and software. Jobs' perfectionism and attention to detail were legendary. He scrutinized every aspect of a product, from the curvature of a device's casing to the precise shading of an icon. This relentless pursuit of excellence pushed engineers and designers to achieve what often seemed impossible. His so-called reality distortion field was a blend of charisma, persistence, and unyielding belief in what could be done, inspiring those around him to exceed their own limitations. While demanding, Jobs' leadership encouraged people to embrace challenges and rethink the boundaries of creativity and technology. Collaboration was another key element of Jobs' innovation process. He assembled small focused teams where designers, engineers, marketers, and visionaries could exchange ideas freely. Jobs encouraged dialogue and debate, understanding that great ideas often emerged at the intersection of diverse perspectives. At the same time, he maintained strict secrecy around Apple's projects, knowing that the element of surprise would amplify the impact of their innovations. This balance between openness within teams and confidentiality in the public sphere allowed Apple to consistently introduce products that seemed revolutionary and unexpected. Storytelling played a crucial role in Jobs' vision of technology. He believed that a product should tell a story, not just function as a tool. This philosophy influenced Apple's marketing and product launches, transforming presentations into legendary events that captivated audiences worldwide. Jobs demonstrated that technology could have personality, identity, and emotion, making users feel connected to the products in a way that transcended utility. His keynotes were more than demonstrations. They were performances that conveyed the elegance, simplicity, and transformative potential of Apple products. Jobs' creative philosophy, however, was not without its challenges. His intensity, perfectionism, and high expectations could create tension, and he was often perceived as uncompromising, even difficult. Yet it was precisely this drive that led to Apple's most groundbreaking achievements. Jobs showed that true innovation requires courage, risk taking, and a willingness to challenge conventional thinking. He proved that when creativity is paired with discipline, vision, and meticulous execution, the results can be extraordinary. Ultimately, Jobs' legacy in creativity is a testament to the power of merging technology with human experience. He demonstrated that innovation is not merely about new features or faster processors, it is about shaping how people live, think, and interact with the world around them. His insistence on design, intuition, collaboration, and storytelling created products that were transformative, iconic, and deeply influential. Steve Jobs' life illustrates that creativity is not just a skill, but a mindset, one that challenges norms, inspires people, and leaves an indelible mark on society. Even decades after his most iconic launches, his philosophy continues to influence designers, engineers, entrepreneurs, and thinkers, serving as a reminder that when vision meets relentless execution, the results can change the world forever. Steve Jobs' influence extended far beyond the products he created. It was a profound impact on culture, business, and the way people think about technology itself. By the time Apple introduced the iPhone in 2007, Jobs had already transformed several industries, but the single device redefined communication, media consumption, and personal computing all at once. The iPhone wasn't just a phone, it was a platform, an ecosystem, and a cultural phenomenon. Jobs envisioned a world where technology was seamless, intuitive, and deeply integrated into daily life. This vision inspired not only Apple's engineers and designers, but also competitors and innovators around the globe, pushing entire industries toward new standards of excellence and user experience. Beyond technology, Jobs changed the way people approached business. He demonstrated that vision, storytelling, and design could be as important as technical specifications and market analysis. Apple's brand became synonymous with creativity, innovation, and elegance because Jobs insisted that every detail, from product packaging to software interfaces, conveyed meaning. He taught the world that products should not just function, but resonate emotionally, creating an experience that people remember and share. His ability to combine art, technology, and commerce created a blueprint for modern entrepreneurship, influencing countless startups and established companies alike. Jobs' impact on culture was equally profound. He elevated design thinking to a global phenomenon, showing that aesthetics and user experience could coexist with cutting edge technology. He inspired a generation of innovators, creatives, and entrepreneurs to challenge the status quo, think differently, and pursue their passions relentlessly. His philosophy encouraged people to value intuition, curiosity, and simplicity, even in complex technological environments. Jobs' life story became a source of motivation worldwide, symbolizing the power of perseverance, vision, and unwavering belief in one's ideas. Despite his immense success, Jobs' journey was not without struggles. His intense personality, exacting standards, and occasional volatility could create tension within teams and personal relationships. Yet, these challenges were inseparable from the results he achieved. Jobs showed that transformative innovation often demands discomfort, persistence, and resilience. His willingness to take risks, defy conventional wisdom, and embrace failure as a learning tool underscored the true nature of leadership and creativity. By pushing himself and those around him to the edge, he catalyzed breakthroughs that reshaped entire industries. Moreover, Jobs' emphasis on simplicity and clarity extended to education, communication, and problem solving. He believed that eliminating clutter, both literal and metaphorical, was key to focusing on what truly mattered. This approach not only guided Apple's product development, but also influenced broader strategies in business and life. Jobs' insistence on clarity of vision and purpose reinforced the idea that innovation is not about doing more, but about doing what is essential, doing it exceptionally, and doing it with intention. Ultimately, Steve Jobs' legacy is a tapestry of innovation, inspiration, and transformation. He redefined technology, business, and culture through a combination of vision, determination, and unyielding commitment to excellence. His life teaches that true impact comes from the courage to pursue bold ideas, the discipline to refine them relentlessly, and the wisdom to connect them meaningfully to human experience. Even after his passing, Jobs' influence endures in the devices we use, the companies we admire, and the countless innovators who continue to follow his example. His story is a testament to the extraordinary possibilities that emerge when creativity, technology, and humanity converge in perfect harmony. Steve Jobs' life and career stand as a remarkable testament to vision, perseverance, and the transformative power of innovation. From his humble beginnings in Los Altos, California, to co-founding Apple in a garage with Steve Wozniak, Jobs' journey was marked by curiosity, boldness, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. He constantly challenged the status quo, believing that technology should be not only functional, but also intuitive, beautiful, and meaningful. His work revolutionized personal computing, music, telecommunications, and digital media, leaving an indelible mark on industries worldwide. Each product he launched, from the Apple II to the Macintosh, from the iPod to the iPhone and iPad, reflected his meticulous attention to detail, relentless pursuit of perfection, and unyielding desire to create experiences that were both groundbreaking and accessible. Jobs' philosophy went beyond creating products. It was about creating experiences that connected with people on a deeply human level. He taught the world to value simplicity, to focus relentlessly on what truly matters, and to approach problems with creativity and empathy. His leadership style, though sometimes demanding and polarizing, demonstrated that bold vision paired with relentless attention to detail could produce innovations that redefine the way people live and work. Even his failures, like being ousted from Apple in 1985, became defining moments that taught resilience, adaptability, and the power of reinvention. His time at Next and Pixar not only broadened his perspective, but also laid the groundwork for his triumphant return to Apple, where he spearheaded a renaissance that transformed the company into one of the most influential and valuable in the world. As we reflect on Jobs' legacy, it becomes clear that his influence extends far beyond technology. He inspired generations of entrepreneurs, designers, engineers, and dreamers to think differently, take risks, and pursue their passions with relentless dedication. His story illustrates that innovation is not merely about invention, but about vision, courage, and the willingness to challenge convention. Beyond the devices and companies he built, Jobs' enduring lesson is about believing in the impossible, embracing failure as a step toward growth, and leaving a lasting mark on society through creativity and determination. Steve Jobs' story also serves as a mirror to the evolving relationship between humanity and technology. He demonstrated how technology could enrich lives, simplify complex tasks, and foster connections across the globe. His unwavering insistence on excellence, beauty, and purpose in every endeavor reminds us that success is not measured solely by profit or popularity, but by the meaningful impact one can make in the world. His life encourages us to remain curious, to question the norm, and to dream bigger than we ever imagined possible. Thank you for exploring the life and legacy of Steve Jobs with us. Remember to subscribe to History Release to continue learning about the remarkable stories that shaped our world and inspired generations of thinkers, creators, and dreamers. Don't forget to turn on notifications